bottled water industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, a $16 billion industry to be exact. In 2007, Americans spent more on bottled water from companies such as Poland Spring, Dasani, Fiji, Evian, and Aquafina than on iPods or movie tickets. More than half of all Americans drink bottled water, and more than a third consume it on a regular basis. Bottled water is carried around by people everywhere they go, cleverly appears in television shows, and is now even offered in most hotel rooms. In fact, it is estimated that people spend from 240 to 10,000 times more for bottled water than they do for tap water. But the public is not aware of the whole truth when it comes to the water that they are actually consuming when they purchase a bottle, mainly because that is exactly what the industries want, for the public not to know. In fact, a recent 2009 study found that less than 2% of nearly 200 popular brand-name bottled water companies actually disclose information such as the source of their water, purification methods, or chemical pollutants found in the water anywhere on their websites or labels. While the FDA does require bottled water companies to test for contaminants and other problems, the public never gets to see the results of these tests if they do happen to fail them, and consequently, access to public monitoring data is scarce. Companies like to leave the consumer to believe that they are buying pure, clean water that comes from pristine springs found in lush forests. But is this really where the water you're drinking is coming from? Most likely, and perhaps sadly, the answer is most often no. Instead of looking to the beauty of nature to find where your water is coming from, you really should be looking here, at your city's tap water. In 2004, it was discovered that Dasani water, a product of the Coca-Cola Company, is nothing more but London tap water. The company simply purified the water and added a small amount of minerals before marketing the product at a 300,000% markup price over the original price for water. In addition to this, Dasani water was then found to have illegally high levels of bromate, a cancer-causing chemical in the water. Unfortunately, Dasani is not the only brand of bottled water that falsely deceives the consumer into thinking it is better water, or the only brand to have been found containing chemicals. An estimated 40% of bottled water comes from tap water, and is simply filtered before being marketed to the public. The FDA and state bottled water programs are severely underfunded, and bottled water is a low priority. Fewer than one staff person is dedicated to developing and issuing bottled water, as well as assuring compliance between bottled water and the regulations that are in place. And due to the less stringent enforcement of the FDA on bottled water companies, 60 to 70% of bottled water sold in the U.S. is exempt from FDA standards because the agency states that rules do not apply to water packaged and sold within the same state. The FDA also exempts carbonated water from bottled water regulations, applying vague general sanitation rules that do not contain specific contamination levels. The consequences that come from such little enforcement are somewhat scary. A study completed by the National Resources Defense Council of more than 1,000 bottles of 103 brand-name water companies showed just how unclean bottled water can be, and very rarely is the public actually informed of such statistics. Nearly 1 in 4, or approximately 22% of the waters tested, were found to violate state limits for bottled water in at least one sample, most often for arsenic or cancer-causing synthetic organic compounds. 1 in 5, or 17% of the tested waters, contained more bacteria than allowed under microbiological purity guidelines, and approximately 1/3 of the samples exceeded these same guidelines or violated an enforced state standard. About 1/5 of the waters also contained synthetic organic chemicals, such as industrial chemicals or chemicals used in manufacturing plastic. And all this is just what is inside of the bottle. We have not even accounted for how the production, distribution, or discarding of the bottle itself affects the environment. On the production front, it can take almost 7 times the amount of water in the bottle to actually produce the bottle itself. The production of plastic to meet our demand of bottled water, which is approximately 2.7 million tons of plastic each year, takes an equivalent of approximately 17.6 million barrels of oil, which equals the amount of oil required to fuel more than 1 million vehicles in the United States each year. Then on a weekly basis, roughly 1 billion bottles of water is shipped across the country in ships, trains, and trucks, a weekly delivery equivalent to 37,800 18-wheelers delivering water. Surely this adds to the ever-growing climate change problem that we are now faced with. Once we have received our water and had our fill, it is often thrown out, causing 88% of empty plastic water bottles to not get recycled in the U.S. alone. According to the Container Recycling Institute, plastic water bottles are not recycled at a rate of 30 million a day. Now that's a lot of bottles. So we are potentially putting chemicals into our bodies, burning oil, adding to the climate change problem, and dumping more waste into landfills, or simply allowing it to accumulate somewhere in nature, and all for what? To avoid this, the faucet in your own home. Drinking tap water has become almost taboo in our present society, but the question is why? The bottled water industry likes to make consumers believe that something is severely wrong with tap water, but perhaps surprising to many, city tap water is much more regulated than bottled water. Regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency as opposed to the FDA, city tap water can have no confirmed E. coli or fecal coliform bacteria, unlike its bottled water counterpart, which has no such prohibition. In fact, city tap water must be checked 100 times or more a month for coliform bacteria, where bottled water plants must conduct the same tests only once a week. City tap water from surface water must be filtered and disinfected, or well-defined protective measures for the source water must be adopted by the water system. Other regulations for city tap water include testing at least once a quarter for many chemical contaminants, having water tested by government-certified labs, reporting of test results and notices of violations to state or federal officials, and along with that, an annual right-to-know report must be published for consumers, telling them what is in their water. Having systems operators who are certified and trained to ensure that they know how to safely treat and deliver water is also part of the EPA regulations for city taps. Repeated high levels of bacteria in the tap water, along with a lack of disinfectant, can also lead to a violation for cities, but not for bottled water manufacturers. So while bottled water may appear to be cleaner and safer, or at least a fancier version of tap water, the water that comes from your faucet is most likely cleaner, despite what industries try to get you to believe. One of the easiest ways in which to ensure that the water you are consuming is clean is to simply invest in an at-home water filtration product such as Brita Water Pitcher. Not only will the water be clean, but the economic savings make it an almost no-brainer decision. Suppose you buy 1 bottle of Dasani bottled water every day for an entire year. At a price of approximately $1.75 per bottle, multiplied by 365 days, the total cost would come to $638.75 annually. Now let's compare this price to purchasing an at-home water filtration product and consuming tap water for an entire year. The initial cost of a Brita pitcher will cost around $24.99. Add to this the cost of replacing the filter, which costs around $6.89 6 times a year, to add to an additional $41.39. The grand total for an entire year would only come to around $66.38. Even if you would then have to purchase a Nalgene bottle so that you can take your water with you, the total cost would still come to only around $80. That would be a total savings of $558.75 annually. Just think of all the things that money could go towards and be put to better use than simply buying water. Sure, bottled water is convenient. It's what the entire industry thrives off of. It's easy to toss in a purse or a school bag and carry with you wherever you go. But ultimately, this convenience has a price to be paid in the end, whether this be through physical money, the use of limited resources, or even our own health. And if all this must be sacrificed simply so that the same water we could get out of a faucet can be bottled and sold back to us at an overstated price, it seems the best thing to do is reach for a glass and fill it with our own water and eliminate the very expensive middleman.